Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, thank you for braving this interesting weather out there. I guess it's better than a snowstorm, right? So thank you for being here tonight. This will be kind of an interesting concert, I think. I'll be talking throughout and introducing all the music throughout. And there's a bit of a story component to it that you'll see. The program is entitled Generation 1, Music of Immigration. And it essentially tells kind of my life story through music. And I've been telling some of my students, I teach a seminar here for transfer students and first year students. We have a unique UB curriculum called the first year seminar. It's also taught for transfer students who are new to UB. And our job as faculty is to really introduce the students to UB and being a college student essentially, and there's a really wide range of topics. And the course that I teach is called Music, Identity, and Authenticity. So I'm doing one this semester for transfer students, and I told them, today it's gonna be really all about me. But I usually try to, when I teach in that class, really make it about the students, because the students learn how to tell their story, and they have to do a presentation at the end, write a paper about themselves, and then pick 3 songs that help to tell their life story. So I told them today will be really all about me, but it's really in so that maybe it can help you to tell your story, hopefully. So thank you for letting me indulge tonight. So I'm going to begin the program with 2 pieces. The first is called Intermezzo. The second one is called Flight. And the story kind of begins when I was a teenager. I became very serious with the guitar. I started when I was about 10 years old, and got pretty into the guitar fairly quickly. And by the time I was 12, 13, I was a very serious rock guitarist, playing in bands with my friends, driving my parents crazy, and making a lot of sound. But by the time I was about 15 or 16, I was really very serious about the rock guitar. And I was playing with much older folks, and playing in like bars and clubs and stuff like that, places where a teenager should not be, but somehow my parents allowed it. So I'm going to show you some fun images. This may shock you if you have not seen these. So these are pictures of my teenage youth. A few of these. So like I was saying, I was a very serious heavy metal rock guitarist, and I was very stubborn, very angsty teenager. And I was kind of very, stuck with my, everything has to be like loud and fast and heavy and all that fun stuff, right? And I was very resistant to most other kinds of music that didn't include the electric guitar and that was loud. So it took me a little while, but essentially towards the end of high school, I kind of started to open up and I had a lot of different experiences, and especially when I went to college, not that I was like new to classical music, because I had heard classical music like growing up here and there on television. We had all these CDs that my parents had, all these things, so I would, every now and then knew what it was, but I never really experienced it. But in college, I really fell in love with the music of this gentleman, Johannes Brahms, a very well-known classical composer. And he's written a lot of music. He wrote a lot of music for piano, chamber music, symphonies, a lot of choral music, and in particular, his piano music is very well known. And when I was really studying this music, I really fell in love with this music. But also was very saddened to know that he'd never written for the guitar. So this is much later. This was when I was a grad student and I was starting to compose music more. I thought, hey, what if I tried to write something that Brahms would have written? So it didn't quite turn out like Brahms, but essentially I tried to put the piano and use some of his ideas on and put it onto the guitar. So that's Intermezzo. And then the second piece, which goes with Intermezzo, which is called Flight, comes from a very different source, but kind of a similar idea. If anyone ever been to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee? Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede, there's a theme park called Dollywood, which is Dolly Parton's like Disneyland. And for the young folks, if you don't know who Dolly Parton is, she's an American icon, a legendary country singer. She's like, I like to tell my kids, she's like the Taylor Swift of her generation in a way, right? Very successful artist, and she's successful enough to have your own theme park, right? So if you go to Tennessee, there's a place called Dolly's Dixie Stampede, Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede. And it's a dinner show where you go into like a stadium, maybe more like an arena, and you get like a big chicken dinner. It's very American. And then you watch cowboys and cowgirls do tricks on horses and like jump through hoops and all these crazy stuff. And it's very cool. And when I was in high school, our high school band program, the marching band and jazz band, I played in the jazz band. We went on a trip down to Tennessee for this big band competition. It was kind of part of the whole experience. We went to Dollywood, and we also went to Dolly's Dixie Stampede. And then when you go there, I don't know if it's still like this, but at the entrance, there's a bluegrass band that plays while you wait in the lobby, but as you go to enter. And it's like a really incredible experience because the musicians are unbelievable. And again, at that time, when I was in high school, I was very much like no country music. But that was really the first time that actually I think I really actually listened to country music in person especially, and I was really floored and blown away by the virtuosity and the energy of the music. So the second piece, Flight, kind of reflects on that experience, but I also really adapt a banjo technique, banjo rolls onto the guitar and kind of has an Americana vibe to it. So I'll start with Intermezzo and Flight. This is a program that I've been kind of working on developing for quite some time. The music I've written kind of on and off for about maybe the last 10 years or so, and performing them in kind of little iterations here and there. And I think about maybe 3 years ago, it kind of really formed into an idea of a program. And I've been playing it out quite a bit, traveling. Last year I did this 5-country tour in Asia, and I've been traveling in North America also, and presenting this quite a different number of places. And I've often done it for students, for high school students, younger, middle, elementary school students also, like assemblies and visiting schools and outreach programs and all that stuff. So there's a bit of a kind of a presentation part of it and some takeaways. So this is for all folks that you consider yourself a student, young or old, right? So the first is telling your story. So I'll be telling my story tonight, and primarily through the music, but I think it's important more than ever today, especially for you young people, to be able to tell your story. And it's a skill like anything else, like performing. It's something, if you've never done it before, you won't be very good at first. But if you keep working on it and getting more experience, you can hone your storytelling skills, right? So, and it's a really important skill, I think, in so many different ways. And the other is, the next is finding your champions. Find your champions. So you'll find that throughout my story, I've been very fortunate to have a really incredible supportive parents and family, but also really great teachers, also colleagues and mentors that have really helped me in so many ways. And I think when I was younger, I wasn't very good at asking for help. But as you get older, you learn that if you just need help, you just ask and you can get help, right? So I wish I had known that earlier on in my life, right? So, but if you work hard, people will want to champion your work and be your champion, right? So, and I think on the other end too, you really have to champion your peers and those around you to receive back, right? So it's kind of a two-way street, right? So find your champions. And then persevere. So often I do this for music students. If you're going to be pursuing a music career in music, very difficult. But at the same time, really, I think life is just difficult, right? No matter what you do. Life is just very challenging. Things happen, and you have to persevere. You have to endure, and it's a very important part, right? And then the most important maybe is take care and be happy. You can't do anything if you're not well, taking care of yourself, and you have to be happy and you have to be well, right? Okay, and then one kind of extra little sidebar is bringing awareness to immigration. Immigration has become a very politically hot topic these days, but in many ways, though, throughout the history of this country in particular, because we're a very unique country, it's always been a very hot topic, and it sometimes cools down, it gets warmer. And tonight's not really going to be about like a political speech or anything like that, or any sort of agenda in that way, but just bringing awareness to immigration, and also because the story entails me immigrating twice in my life, actually. So it's just kind of one version of an immigrant's life, and I think the idea is to kind of, hopefully you can hear one story, one of many, and it's not particularly any, it's not a great story in many ways. It's a fairly normal immigrant story in many ways, but it's hopefully me sharing these stories, it normalizes and humanizes the experience for everyone, and especially if you directly maybe come from an immigrant background, or your parents or your grandparents, and if you keep going back, it's probably almost everyone in this room, right? So that's kind of part of this program as well. Okay, so this is very much the me part here coming up. So I'm going to show you a bunch of photos. So it's my story. I was born in South Korea. And here are some photos from my childhood there, growing up in the 80s and the 90s. That's my mother. That's my grandfather. There's a lot of photos, but I had to really pick and choose here. And you see kind of, I progress, I grow. That's my older brother. I'm the one in the red. Somehow it worked out. All the pictures I'm wearing some sort of red, so it's easy to pick me out if you'd like. Except that one, actually, I'm wearing blue. And that's my cousin Yana right there. And I'm in the red again there, being a goofball there. And if you have a good eye, you'll see kind of in the photos, the color changes. It's like time progressing and technology, I guess, advancing. And some more photos here. And Yeah, that one's a fun one. I have no recollection of this photograph, other than like I've just seen this photograph many times throughout my life. But apparently, even at a young age, I like to just like get up on a table and sing and dance or whatever to entertain people, right? Which is kind of funny. And then when I was 8 years old, my family, we decided to immigrate to Canada. We immigrated to a very small town outside of a small city called Windsor, Ontario. Some of you might be familiar. It's the city that's across the border from Detroit, Michigan. It's not too far from here, actually. And it was actually a really wonderful place to grow up. That's my third grade teacher, Mrs. Fazekas. She was very lovely. And there were definitely some challenges. I didn't speak any English when we arrived in Canada, and just had to kind of pick it up very quickly. But when you're 8 years old, you can kind of pick things up quickly, and I did adapt, I think, quickly enough. But interestingly, I think even until I was like in grad school, like English was definitely, speaking English and also reading comprehension was always a bit of a weak point, I think. So, which makes sense because it technically is my second language. Although because all of my schooling has been in English since the third grade, my Korean is very poor. But it's it's an interesting conundrum there. But like I said, it was a very great place to grow up, and that's where I also started playing the guitar. It's kind of a long story, so I'm not really going to tell the full story, but like I was saying earlier, I started playing the guitar when I was 10. Essentially, the short version is I had a cousin who was much older who came to visit us, and he played the guitar very well, and he played the guitar for me and my brother, and I was absolutely enamored. And that was when I was 9 years old. I had never seen anyone play the guitar in person live, and he was very good, and he played the acoustic guitar. Maybe he sang a song. I don't even really remember what he played, but it was so cool. I was like, oh my God, I have to play the guitar. And I begged my mom for about a year, and when I was 10, she finally got me a guitar and some guitar lessons, right? So anyways, fast forward, when I was 15, my family, we decided finally to move to the US, and we just basically crossed the river to Michigan. And the real story, the reason we moved to Canada was we wanted to move to the U.S. because my dad's side of the family had already immigrated to the U.S. in the 70s and the 80s, and my dad's sister had petitioned us to get a green card and move to the U.S., but that took 8 years. So in those 8 years, we lived in Canada, and Canada, especially at the time, were much more welcoming and open to giving out green cards, so you could move to Canada much more easily. Fun fact, Canadians are much more protective of their citizenship, though, so it's just kind of an interesting immigration thing, kind of like maybe paint this broad picture that Canada is so much nicer and beautiful, they have free healthcare and all that stuff, which is all actually, a lot of it is very great, and then Canadian people are stereotypically very nice people, but it's also not, it's just like any other place, it's not perfect, you know, so, but in any case, so we moved to the US, and that's when I was starting to get more serious about the guitar. So here's some photos. I actually don't have that many photos from my teenage years, but usually they were me playing the guitar, and so these are some photos of playing in the jazz band in high school in Michigan. And so I'm going to play you 3 pieces. The first is called Idle Green. Actually, I think it's flipped on the paper program. You can just refer to the screen. Idle Green is it's really kind of an adaptation of a really well-known jazz guitar album and song of the same similar name, Idle Moments by Grant Green, and that was my first jazz album that I bought when I was a teenager on my own volition with my own money, and it was had a really big impact on me. So I kind of take the main kind of idea of that song and spin it into a solo guitar piece. I'm going to follow that with just an improvisation in the jazz style, just kind of a free improvisation in the spirit of jazz, because jazz music, that's really the core improvisation. And then I'll finish that off with Amor, vinho, which is a piece that's more influenced by Latin Brazilian style of jazz and kind of my take on it, right? It's my own little take on that. So we have Idle Green, I'll do a little improvisation, and Amor, vinho. Make an announcement at the beginning. If you could silence your cell phones if you have not, that would be much appreciated. switch guitars. Because remember this guy? So I'll play something more related to this guy. So after high school, I ended up going to the University of Southern California. I went to sunny California, Los Angeles, and majored in classical guitar performance. It was kind of like a dream come true in many ways. It was a bit of a miracle because my high school career academically was a bit of a disaster. And I like to tell my students it's actually a miracle that I'm standing here and became a college professor, because academically in high school it was so bad. But I practiced my butt off. I found out in high school that you could go to college for guitar, and that was kind of like a huge light bulb. Okay, good, I think I can try and do that. And the funny thing was, back then, we did actually have the internet. I'm not that old, but it was not the same as, you know, the internet of today. And you really couldn't like look up things. We didn't have YouTube, and because I lived in such a small town in Canada, and even when I came to Michigan, and we were so new there, and there's not many resources you could look into. And I think by the end of high school, I'd met like maybe 2 other students my age that had played classical guitar, and that was like from the same teacher, you know. And in my high school, I think I was the only student that had played classical guitar. And when we moved to Michigan, we moved to a much bigger high school. There was about 2,000 students, but I was the only one, at least that I knew of, that played the classical guitar and then like wanted to audition for college for classical guitar. So it was very limited. So it was kind of really like, you know, playing, you know, darts with the lights off, and I had no, you know, no reference of like how, you know, good I was or bad I was. But basically I just kind of put it all in and practiced my butt off, and I went and got accepted. I'll have a fun story about that later too, but I did get into USC, and I went there, and that was my first headshot. That was supposed to be a professional headshot. It was basically just my friend on a digital camera taking a picture outside. And I had to do it because when I was a freshman, I took a class, and one of the assignments that we had to do is we had to put together a press kit. So if you want to become a professional musician or an artist, you need like a portfolio and a press kit. And these days it's basically like a website or maybe social media, and you gotta be famous on Instagram or TikTok, right? But back then you basically like put together like a little folder, had like a nice headshot, had your bio, and then had a CD. It was a CD by the time I was there. It would have been like a cassette tape, you know, 10 years before I was there, but it was a CD of like demos of your playing and that kind of thing. So that was like my attempt to be a classical guitarist. And I ended up graduating there and then went to the Eastman School of Music, and that's how I moved to Rochester, New York, which is just down the road from here. And I did my master's degree, and that was kind of my next professional headshot, trying to be more serious and very classical, and a little bit more lighthearted there. And eventually stayed there and finished my doctorate degree, DMA degree in guitar performance. And throughout all that time, coming from a rock guitar background, it's very natural to like play in a band and play with people and just kind of like jam, and which is not the case these days in many ways, unless if you like go to like a rock school program, because these days like everyone just sits at home and looks at YouTube and then plays, you know, in your bedroom. But at least when I was playing as I was a kid, it was like you like played your guitar and like you found a friend at school that also played the guitar, or maybe they played the bass guitar or some drums, and then you just like get together and you try to play songs together. So it was very natural for me when I got more serious into classical music and playing classical guitar to collaborate with other people and play in ensembles and play in groups and do these different projects. So here's a series of photos. That was at Eastman with a bunch of students. We did this big project of a piece by a composer named George Crumb. It was a fun project, and that's a group called the Tantalus Quartet. Actually, I still play with this group. And it's a group where all the members, we live in different places, and we usually, we don't play too often actually. We usually meet up to play at guitar festivals, but it's a group that I've been playing with quite some time now. That's the Eastman Guitar Quartet. That was a quartet that I played in when I was in school there at Eastman, and that's from a performance where we won a national prize. There was a kind of an ensemble competition for college students, and we got to go to California and play at this big guitar convention. That was a lot of fun. And then this is a group called 5 by 5. They still exist today, actually, in Rochester. I'm no longer a member, but my wife, who actually plays the piano, she's a member of this group. But it's a group consisting of flute, clarinet, piano, double bass. It's a very kind of a classical ensemble, but the guitar is actually primarily electric guitar. And so this group plays mostly new music that's written and like living composers, and kind of blurs the lines of classical music and what that can be. So the next piece that I'm going to play for you is really a piece that I wrote for this group. I do have, did I? Okay, no, I thought I had inserted some more photos, but that's later. This piece that I'm going to play for you for the electric guitar is called Genesee Trains, and I wrote it for this group 5 by 5, and it was actually part of an educational program where we collaborated with a bunch of I think elementary, middle school string students, violinists, and we did a little concert together, and I wrote it for all of us to play together. So it's basically the 5 of us, and then like 20 sixth graders playing violin. And so I had to make the piece not too difficult, but also interesting enough. And it's called Genesee Trains because I wrote this in Rochester, and in Rochester, the river that flows through the city is called the Genesee River. And you'll see in the music, there's little train cars, like these little musical loops and just like train cars, you can link as many as you'd like, right? So it starts with a very simple bass line, and then I start to layer loops on that bass line. And then I'll take like a rock guitar solo in the middle, like an improvised rock guitar solo, and then you'll hear the melody at the end. And I think this piece is kind of a good example of my life experience and all the different kinds of music that I've learned and enjoyed over the years. And it kind of draws from everything from classical minimalism, Steve Reich, if you're into that kind of thing. I got to meet Steve Reich when I was an undergrad, which was a really big deal. And also to like everything from the rock music that I played, you'll hear that's very obvious in this piece, but also like Renaissance counterpoint and polyphony, which is like music from like the 1600s or before, and some of the ideas there. So it's kind of a bit of a mishmash of things. But this is called Genesee Trains. I'm going to quickly double check my tuning on this guitar. along, actually, I just realized I need a little piece of equipment that I left in the green room, so I'll be right back. But in the meantime, I'll let you look at this photo. I'll be right back. I found my little device, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. So moving on with the story, this is actually in the basement of this building. Many of you, if you're students or faculty here, I'm sure you're familiar. It's called B1 Baird. It's our main rehearsal room, and this is also where I teach my beginning guitar class. And this particular semester, we had, I don't remember how many, it was a lot of students. And so the university photographer came and got some nice photos. But essentially, I started teaching here, I think in 2014. And so I was hired to teach guitar, and I was commuting from Rochester because I was still finishing my degree there, and this was a part-time job initially. But I was able to grow the program, and it was very, very full guitar program with many students interested in guitar. And here's a photo from one of our guitar concerts. If you're interested, at the end of April, the last Sunday in April, 3 p.m. This is Slee Hall, which if you've been, it's our main concert hall where the big ensembles, orchestra, choir, and we do our guitar concerts in there as well. And we do a big guitar orchestra. So if you've never seen that before, come on out. Last Sunday of April. And so I was very fortunate to build the guitar program here and work with a lot of students, and it's been a real joy to work here in so many ways. And I used to not, actually I just included this next set of photographs for today, so this is brand new. But if you've ever been to the Center for the Arts, there's a nice wall there now they had a 30-year celebration of the building of the Center for the Arts, so they put this beautiful display of all the artists that have played, which is incredible, like Ray Charles, Tedeschi Trucks, John Batiste played there, big comedians, but they also decided to include our guitar studio, which was incredible. I was so humbled, and so it's a really nice to walk by there and see that, oh, it's so cool, and But anyway, so the guitar program has really brought a lot of joy here, but also my colleagues here. And for those of you that may not be aware, our department is actually, actually I forgot, these are also new photos. So kind of more on the collaboration that I've told you a bit before. So that's a duo that I play with my dear colleague Steven Guerra here, who's a Brazilian guitar specialist and music theory professor. And then a relatively newly formed duo that I have with my very dear colleague Jonathan Golov, who's a professor of cello and composition. And we do strange improvisations, and we have a lot of fun, which is actually related to the next piece that I'm going to play for you. And I was going to tell you, so our department, there's a long history of new music and music written by living composers and experimentation and really pushing the boundaries of what music is and what instruments can do. And it's really a wonderful history here, and particularly we have a really phenomenal PhD program in music composition that brings students from all over the world to study music very rigorously and seriously. And part of the whole deal is that we invite many guests, composers, and ensembles, and this was fairly early on. I think that may have been after my first year. We have this festival called June in Buffalo, which is an amazing festival if you are a serious composer of new music. And we bring in, again, like really top-notch performers from Europe and all over the US. And this particular group I played with, this is my first year when I was hired, was a group called Ensemble Signal. They're really one of the best ensembles based in New York City that does this type of music. So in that light, so I'm going to play a piece for you called When the Robots Invade, which is very much kind of in this avant-garde experimental style of music. And in short, it's kind of a silly piece because of the title. And I think once you hear the piece, you'll see, oh yeah, it sounds like robots are invading. And, but there is kind of a more serious thought to the piece. It mainly uses what's called extended techniques. It's kind of a fancy academic word for playing whatever instrument that you play. It's going to be for the electric guitar for now. In unusual, different ways, that's not the standard technique. And I'm going to use the device that I had left in the green room. It's called a guitar slide, okay? Which in the standard technique, sound like this. It's used in the blues, a lot of different styles of music. Probably the most famous rock song, I actually just heard this out, the construction workers had it blasting on the radio earlier today. Maybe somebody might recognize this. Anyone recognize it? Yeah, so I learned that when I was 14, and it comes in handy because it's the song that everyone shouts at a concert, play Freebird, so I can actually play it if you'd like. So, but anyways, that's the standard technique of how you use a slide. It's a very, wonderful way to get melodies to sound more vocal or sound like an instrument that has no frets, right? And you can slide around. So I'm going to use this device, but in a very unusual way, using some extended techniques. And I also use a delay effect, and I also use the loop pedal again. And the idea behind the piece is trying to kind of work with the technology, the delay and the looper, and it's kind of like fighting it a little bit, but also working with it, and it's trying to have this little dance with the technology and see who comes out best, I guess, in a way, and decide if the robots have invaded. And I think for us, more than ever, it's like these little devices, they're always in our pockets, and it's like if we leave it somewhere, we panic, and it's like we can't live anymore, right? So it's like maybe we've already been invaded by the robots, and who is the master, you or this device, right? So that's kind of the question here, because you'll see that I interact with the technology, and I create a loop, it's a very long loop, and then it starts again, and I try to layer new loops on top of it that kind of work in interesting ways. So this is When the Robots Invade. And I do actually have to use my phone for this one. All right, moving along. So we're going to go back to the classical guitar. So I'm going to show you some more images from my more recent life. Been very fortunate to have a life and career in music, which is real privilege. And I get to travel quite a bit and share music. I teach quite a bit when I travel also. And so that photo, yeah, that is from San Diego at a workshop a few years ago. It's a workshop actually I go every summer to teach and play. That's from a photo from New York City actually. This is maybe 3 years ago. I did a kind of a residency with a nonprofit there called Creations that does these guitar programs at schools, middle schools and high schools throughout New York City in all 5 boroughs. So I went and visited a bunch of schools and played for them and gave presentations and taught them. And this is a fun little project I did with some friends out in Montana. This is kind of a long story, but my dear flutist friend Norman Menzeles, who used to live out there, he had this really great project, so he invited us for this little tour, and we played several concerts there a few summers ago. That's from a concert I played in South Korea several years ago also. And that's one of my favorite pictures. That's from actually about 10 years ago, but that is from, anyone want to guess where that is? Think big mountains. So it is, oh actually, I guess I can't remember if it is the Rockies technically, but this is in British Columbia. It's north of Vancouver. There's a town called Squamish, British Columbia, and there's a university there called Quest University. So we did the guitar workshop there, which was really cool. So it's like this beautiful small campus, like pristine, in the middle of the mountains, and so that was a lot of fun. And I believe I added some, new photos. This I was telling you earlier, I did this 5-country tour in Asia last year where I took this program. So that's from a concert I did in Singapore. I didn't include it here, but something that a lot of people don't know is UB has a campus in Singapore. So I went and visited their campus also, which was so cool. And when you go there, it's kind of hard to describe, but basically it's like a college campus. They look like office buildings, but there's several international colleges, and I think it's like the Singapore Institute of Management, which is based there, and then UB basically rents some classrooms there, and we run classes, and you can get a degree in Singapore from UB, State University of New York, without setting one foot in Buffalo, which is very cool. But you go there and there's a sign, it has a UB sign, so it's like kind of like a portal. You're in Singapore, but you're in Buffalo. So anyways, but I played this concert there, it was a lot of fun. I went to Japan also and did a concert master class. I taught a 6-hour master class, which was amazingly long, and then played a concert immediately after. It was a very long day. But the Japanese people, they love everything very organized. Like each master class was exactly 50 minutes. And it ended exactly at 15 minutes after it started, and there was a 10-minute break, and it was really, really wonderful day actually. And then that's in South Korea. Korea Universities, which is one of the top universities in Korea, they're one of our partner institutions, so you can do a study abroad program there. And so we have some relationship with UB and Korea University. And they happen to have a very well-established and long ago established classical guitar club. So I met with these students and I played for them and gave them a little class. It was really cool. And then that was in Thailand, My Idol University, which is a really amazing music school they have there. It's one of their big universities in Bangkok. And same thing, I presented this program there and taught some master classes and such. And then the last part of the leg was in the Philippines, which kind of a long story, but it was great. Maybe I'll tell you the full story one day. Anyways, moving along, I am married, and I have 2 very beautiful children. And so I'm very lucky. And I feel very, very privileged to have all these things. But this is also the portion of the presentation where I tell the younger students especially, or maybe also the college students, that marriage, very difficult, not easy. Kids, even more difficult. Yeah, so tread carefully, right? So, but again, very, very lucky to have all this in my life. So I have this suite of pieces that I call Positively Sweet. And it's got 3 pieces. The first is called Musings, which I wrote for my wife Haeyeon when we first met. And the second one is called Gratitude. It's a very simple song of giving thanks. And the last one is Fantasy. And it's kind of a long story to it, but essentially it's inspired by the children's novel, The Little Prince, Le Petit Prince, if any of you are familiar. It's a very famous French children's novel. And long story short, because I lived in Canada, I studied French since the 3rd grade, all the way to the end of high school. But my French is terrible, and I can't really speak French, but I do actually read French, and I can kind of fake French, kind of in a comedic way when I'm with my kids. But other than that, my French is really terrible. And but The Little Prince is a very famous children's novel. You know, it's been translated in all different languages, and I had to read it several times. Actually, I think throughout all those years, and never really ever resonated with me. But I actually ended up reading the English translation. I think maybe it was maybe even in grad school. It was just there. It's a very quick read, you know. But it kind of really hit me really hard. And it was essentially the gist of the book. The story is that when we become adults, we lose our curiosity and our creativity, essentially, and that's kind of the gist, and how, you know, it's really important to try and not lose that as you grow old, right? So that's the third one, Fantasy. thank you for sticking around. So we're nearing the end here of the program, and just wanted to make a quick shout out. So I've recorded this program as an album, Generation 1, and it's essentially almost done. And I've been chipping away for many years, and in this past year I've actually worked on it quite a bit, and I'm anticipating the release in January later this year. If you'd like to do a pre-sale, out there's some QR codes, and you can save the album, and you'll receive a personalized CD when it comes out. And I'm happy to tell you more about that afterwards as well. But we're going to end the program with these 7 pieces, these 7 Caprices. And just to kind of sum up, I guess, the whole program, I think for me, just living in so many different places, being born in Korea, living in Canada, living in Michigan and California, and then here in New York, and having also traveled quite a bit, it's a really interesting journey, meeting a lot of different people. And then I think being also Asian American in this country is an interesting experience, trying to find who you are. And I think for me, the guitar and music kind of has always been the common thread. And then interestingly enough, the music itself has been kind of all over the place, which kind of makes sense, all the different kind of paths that I've kind of gone down. And I think on this program, I tried to capture little bits of all of those things, but also try to have a common thread, which is really essentially the guitar. And I think all the little bits, kind of my life experiences, but all the little musical influences, everything from Stevie Wonder to Seo, who's a really well-known Korean. He kind of invented K-pop in the 90s, essentially, and to Villalobos, to Joe Beam, Brazilian music, and jazz music, and rock music, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, all these different things. So they've kind of all come together. So these last set of pieces, the 7 Caprices, kind of capture them, I think, in little tiny bits, and they're also just kind of all a little fun. And there's a little bits of Debussy, little bits of King Crimson, little bits of really famous guitar song by a band called Kansas, and a little bit of country and bluegrass at the end also. So I'll play and announce these. They're all relatively short, actually, and I'll play them and announce them as they come. So these are the 7 Caprices. We have a very light reception outside. Would love to chat with you if you want to stick around. And thank you again for coming and hope you enjoyed the program. Thank you.